So I guess to start off, we've been doing this for a year. In this year, reading all these profiles, what is something that you guys have learned about the community here that you didn't know before, having read, I think, what, 10 profiles in all?
That's a great question.
That is a great question. I'm going to give an answer that I feel like we can decide if we want to edit this or something, but my answer is that I notice a lot of Indy Hall members in the profiles using a lot of the same language to talk about a lot of the same concepts. And I'm heartened by that people are having a consistent experience, a consistent warm experience of feeling belonging. But at the same time, I feel like it gives me an indication that I want to do more in our community that has these like distinct touch points. So I can see an even greater variety of people talking about stuff like, oh yeah, so-and-so would have never said that. Kevin Seidman never would have answered that because he didn't have that kind of experience here. And I think it's in some point, it's just, when you are interviewing someone about something and you understand that it's like promotional opportunity. You're looking for certain words that we're all glom onto. We're talking about this warm, welcome, comfortable community experiences. And it gives me this desire to spend the next year of this project going deeper and weirder and more specific. I'm looking forward to the day when I read something in a member profile and I'm like, that happens here?
I mean, that touches on really where I wanted to go with my answer. I think there's this really interesting duality between how good it feels for us to get to read the words that other people see, the things that we see.
Yeah.
Like, I think Adam and I share this vantage point where we see more than most people, right? It is in a way our job to be paying attention. And it's not always clear what people are seeing and what they're not. And so it is really reassuring, heartwarming, validating, I would say, to know that other people are seeing it. And the takeaway is also still remembering that not everybody is seeing it. And among the values of the work that you've done on these interviews is bringing the things that not everybody sees to the surface, as well as helping people who maybe have seen it but haven't been able to put the language to it. So I feel like there's multiple layers there. And I agree that getting weirder and more specific with it makes a ton of sense, in part because different people are going to connect with those experiences at different levels. But ultimately, like, what my hope for this series that has been accomplished and going forward can continue to be elevated is things that happen every day. Sometimes are mundane, sometimes are magical, and sometimes both. But by the nature of what we do and how it happens, most people don't get to see most experiences. And so it's super valuable to have them kind of stick to paper in a metaphorical sense so that more people can see them who are not there to observe them in the first place.
Yeah. There was a profile, I think with Luke, and Luke said something that resonated with me about when he's at Indy Hall, it's hard to be stuck in a rut, or it like helps him get out of a rut, which is pretty innocuous. It feels I could hear a lot of people saying that. But a lot of people in their profiles, they talk about, the magic of coming here and talking to other people and how lovely it feels. And Luke talking about that rut, maybe that's just the year I'm having, I don't know. But that like really struck a chord with me. And it reminded me of an entry point for me in our community when I became a part of our community in late 2011. And I can hear Captain Falco talking about, it's hard to have a bad day here. I've had a bad day here, but it doesn't stay a bad day.
It's
here.
like frowning while eating a cookie. Extremely hard to do those things at the same time.
Yeah.
And having a bad day and being at Indy Hall, it's possible, but it is harder than having that bad day on your own, in your apartment, or even out at a coffee shop.
Yeah. And I loved hearing Luke be vulnerable and talk about the fact that he does have creative ruts or work ruts or life ruts. And the solution he's come up with in part is being present in this space and with this community to help him get out of that. Because I think that's the kind of thing that resonates with a lot of people right now. And if anything that surprised me, it was that people are willing to be a little more vulnerable and talk about not every day is magic, actually. And some days aren't. And that those are the days when I'm especially happy to be here.
Yeah. It reminds me, this is going to sound so weird, especially with where social media is at, but it reminds me of like a real life version of Twitter in the early aughts, in the sense of I grew up disconnected from one of my cultures. So then like reading people be like, oh yeah, my abuela calls all cereals cornflakes. I was like, oh my God, you do that too? And it's the same thing here where it's like a lot of these people don't really cross over. They don't see each other, but then the things like you guys said that they're talking about, they're similar experiences, and you're like, oh wow, that's just so interesting.
I think so much of any kind of community work is not just creating those shared experiences, but helping bring them to the surface so people can see them and have what you just described, which is that feeling of, oh, it's not just me. And I think that's a super underrated tool, because sometimes it feels like the hardest thing to do, and sometimes it feels like too easy to be worth doing. But in either case, knowing that it's like there on the table for somebody to grab from, whether they grab it or not, sometimes that's the end of the work, and you kind of got to trust that the universe will connect to those things when the time is right.
Yeah, yeah. And Indy Hall feels like a combinator that allows for the time to be right more than not, and allows for people to discover this pattern or larger thing they're a part of. I think there's a very cool tension between knowing you're a part of something greater and knowing that you are individualized within something greater. And, you could take it either way. You could say, I want to be part of something greater because I want to know how many people like have cornflakes like that. Oh, wow, that really strikes a chord with me. It's like that kind
really
of specificity is it, right? And it's cool to know I feel seen. I feel like I'm a part of something. I don't feel weird. And then there's another way to look at that. Oh, I thought I was special, right? And I think there's a very cool tension of trying to figure out when is the best time to realize you're belonging to something greater than you and the familiarity and the pattern you're a part of, and when is the best time to leverage your individuality and your uniqueness. The tension is not mutually exclusive. They feed each other, actually. And I think Indy Hall, and specifically Cam, this project, your project, helps people see those parts. Alex mentioned earlier, we have the privilege of being able to see that stuff at a pretty high level all the time. It's our work. It's what we're here for. Not everyone gets to see through that lens like we have all the time. And I think this project helps people see through that lens.
So one of the things that I didn't really delve into either one of your interviews was getting to meet each other and then getting to meet each other. And what I mean by that is like you have your first initial meeting of somebody. You're like, okay, this is who this person is. And then when you actually sit down and share a beer, where it's like, oh, this is who you are. Like, what was that process like?
Damn, Cam. Okay. You want to go first?
Well, it's hard to ever reflect on anything from so long ago and not just instantly feel embarrassed. Oh my God, what was I like? What was Alex thinking when he met me? Because I was a different person 14 years ago, and so much of my life and who I am has been forged and shaped and refined through this thing we share that we're a part of. One of the things that I think is really special about my relationship with Alex is it is, for me, if not the first time, it is easily the most pronounced relationship that has crossed through so many different spaces and realms, where I was brought on to be an assistant to Alex to support all of the work that he was doing and spinning different plates and trying to take things out of his way so he could keep doing what he was doing. I had a year, like our annual interval check-in, which is traditionally in Indy Hall history, the time when you say, okay, time for you to fly the nest. Thanks for your service. You're going to go on to do other things. How do you want to do it? And our conversation was a bit different in that we decided the work continues. Let's find a way for you to stick around and continue supporting. Because the nature of my role back then was you do a year of it, you find something else to connect to, and then you pass the torch. And I threw a wrench in that, and we kept doing something and making something deeper and bigger, something really meaningful to me. And over the years, my relationship from a work relationship has changed with Alex, and our friendship and traveling together. And I was an officiant for Alex's wedding. And I think my relationship with Alex from when I met him to where we are right now is so interesting because it has become so robust as friends, as coworkers, as I'm an employee in service, to I'm a trusted confidant. Like, I get to know things that nobody else at Indy Hall needs to know because Alex trusts me with that. And we can hang out, and I can be who I am. And I don't have secrets from Alex because the level of care and trust we have just crosses more realms than most people get, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, this is a little bit walking the long way around your question, but it is a bizarre privilege. It's an amazing privilege. I wouldn't even know if I recommend this to every single person. And I'm not saying everybody is cut out for this. Every like duo is cut out to have this kind of relationship, but it is so special to me that we can have that. And I think it is a part of what makes Indy Hall special. And it's a part of this same value set that makes Indy Hall not just work, but relationships, but like every kind of relationship. And for me to be able to enjoy that with the person who made this thing, it is a tremendous privilege to have that kind of trust. And it brings me back to that almost feeling of embarrassment. I don't know what the hell you thought I was about 14 years ago, but you saw something in me that I didn't even see. And over the course of these 14 years, I've benefited from that in a way that I couldn't have forecast. I could have never imagined. I didn't know.
No, same. I mean, I have a super vivid memory so hang on. So, and I've told this, at least like the abridged version of this many times, and I don't know how many times you've even been around to hear it, but as Adam said, like I was not hiring for the role or job that Adam does today because that role didn't exist. And actually, I wasn't even originally looking for somebody for the sort of community leadery, operational, like the very multifaceted role that is the day-to-day of Indy Hall. And we had a model for that Adam described, the kind of 1 year cycle. I was looking for more direct personal help. I was spinning a bunch of plates. I was working on consulting projects and Indy Hall and stacking the break. As is tends to be the case, I'm working on several things at once. I just need somebody to help like graft onto me. And also back to the job description part of it, there was no job description. I wanted to meet people who were curious enough about the weird universe of stuff that I did to want to throw themselves in the deep end and just figure out ways to help, right? And that was the way I'd created the Indy Hall role as well. And so I was like, well, maybe I can replicate that. And I had interviewed a couple of folks. I put out a call online, I think through a blog post, and back when social media was good. Or useful, I should say. And talked to a handful of folks, lined up a handful of conversations. And I don't think Adam was the first person, but was like one of the first. And timing just so happened to be that the day we met and had our first conversation about working together, I was leaving, I think later that day or the next day for
Germany.
For Germany for the Co-working Europe conference. At the time, Indy Hall was very active in the international co-working scene as like educators and speakers, and we were basically teaching what we had learned along the way. And I very vividly remember getting in a taxi to the Philadelphia airport after our conversation and canceling the rest of the interviews. I was like, we're good. Like, there wasn't even an offer extended. I was like, I don't want to string those people along. I'm about to go on a trip. I don't want them sitting for a week thinking that an interview that they thought was going to happen is going to happen. Say, thank you for your interest. I think we've found the person. So could I tell you exactly what that impression was that made me that confident? I don't know. I feel like there's so many different ways to bring people in, and I've always been more on the intuitive end of the spectrum for hiring and partnering and collaborating and stuff like that. But I think that was kind of what I saw was a deep curiosity, almost an insatiable one. And I've seen that be so much of your fuel over the years. Met with somebody who, I don't know, the vibe just seemed right. And
can I say there's something to be said for the fact that my relationship with Alex was introduced through one of my closest friends, Aaron Grando, and Aaron and Alex had worked in the same ad agency.
And I'd specifically hired Aaron as like a department leader at the agency that Adam was working at the time.
Yeah.
Interning, I guess.
So there's a chain of trust.
Yeah.
And I think to me, it is so emblematic of what I've learned about how Philadelphia works, and therefore how in my idealized mind, how careers and new relationships and opportunities ought to work, of people vouching for one another. And it was really meaningful to me that my buddy Aaron vouched for me and introduced me to Alex. And that was the beginning domino of me seeing that happen over and over and over and over again with me and beyond me over these past 14 years. And when I was introduced to Alex, I was ostensibly introduced to a new kind of rock star. Like in my mind at the time, I was working as a social media copywriter for an ad agency, and I was having to justify what my role was all the time because it was not taken as seriously at that time. It was in its infancy. But I was seeing people make their own stuff. And I met Alex and I saw someone who was not making something online. He was making something real. And it was not a movie, and it was not a show, and it was not graphic design. It was, I mean, it's hard not to talk about it in make-believe, idealized ways, but it was what I see as the dream. It's like the point. What are we all here to do? To fart around, and then to meet someone who has made a space and nurtures a space for people where they just decide, I'm going to wake up at a certain hour and I'm going to be there because I like that. Someone orchestrates that. I'm going to work with that person. Didn't know it existed. I remember sitting with you for an interview. We were in the Christchurch Park, and I can't remember what the context of the interview was, but I was just watching this person be interviewed and talk about this thing that he's made. And all of the opportunities to talk about himself were deflected and turned into talking about the other people who were in the room.
I think that was when Dave and Maurice were doing Developing Philly. I was a couple of guys doing similarly to what you've done with us. They made a documentary web series about the history of the Philly tech community, which obviously Indy Hall is much greater than tech, but in the lineage of the tech community in Philadelphia, especially of that like 2006 to 2016 era, we were deeply woven into the fabric of it. Your job was, again, to like graft onto me and learn, not just, when I say to learn me, it sounds very self-centered, and it's more that like I am the center of this universe, the source of the gravity, holding it all together. And I don't think I alone can keep being that source of gravity. I need additional, not just mass, but the intention. And I feel like somebody who can like understand me, but also not just do what I would do, but also like in the idealized version, but I think is what has been reflected in our friendship and our partnership over the years, is one where the best results aren't because I said we're going to do a thing or Adam said we're going to do a thing. It's either of us can come to the other with something, knowing that the other person will either be like, hell yeah, go for it, or whatever additions or tweaks or massaging, like the thing that comes out on the other side will be better than either of us could have created, which I think is like at the heart of collaboration. To me is distinct from a divide and conquer. This is your role, that's my role. No, sometimes the one person leads, sometimes the other person supports. And that fluidity, I think, is where so much of the depth in, again, all of those different strata of our relationship has really gotten to take shape and form. And it's where the trust gets built and reinforced. It's the kind of thing that I feel very fortunate that in each of the corners of my career over the better part of 20 years now, like Adam is not an anomaly. I have similar multi-layer personal, professional, deep relationships with my other long-term collaborators, but they're also each unique and distinct. And the depth that Adam and I have is unique because of the particular highs and lows that we've gone through together, and the fact that Adam has been present for effectively every high watermark success and crisis of the last 14 years. But also I could see a lot of work relationships where the person in my role sees it as their job to protect someone in Adam's role as a subordinate, so to speak. I'm going to tell you as much as you need to know, but I don't want to distract you from quote unquote your job. And there are days or times or experiences where that idea definitely creeps in. I get where that comes from. But then I can remind myself, no, this is a person that you can trust with whatever we're actually dealing with. because we're going to solve this together. And I think it's like, I don't know, I can take all of this back even to before Adam and I met. And I think about the work experiences, the professional experiences, the coworkers and managers and leaders that I worked with. And granted, I only had like a handful in the grand scheme of a career before, because I started all this when I was in my early 20s too. But like the fact that I had a manager at my first web development job, and I was a co-op, so I was about as junior as it gets, and she was a senior web developer at a prominent agency in the region, and she never treated me like an intern. She treated me like a real first-class coworker. Mm-hmm. And even as a teenager, I worked in a local computer shop, and I had a boss who could have treated me like a kid, but treated me like a person who was interested in technology and wanted to learn. And so I feel like there's no way that I could be me and bringing the version of me that I am to our relationship without those people and those influences. Mm. It's not necessarily a thing that I consciously think about every day, but when I have a chance to, those are the kind of influences from me that I think recenter why I approach our relationship the way that I do. And I try to do it consistently across all of my working relationships. At least I treat it as a default. It's not always possible, but this kind of relationship is the North Star. It is also the proving ground for what's possible in those other relationships. Go, well, I may not ever get there, but as long as we're trending in that direction, even if we never get there, we're still going the right way.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of what's being said is almost in essence like the removal of ego, and kind of seeing like how you guys operate and how this place runs. Like it takes a village is kind of lived out through here, right? So for example, I've seen you guys just kind of let people run with their own ideas and projects, and it's not really ever hand-holding. It's, I'm going to give you the wind beneath your wings, you got this. And letting people kind of exist in that space, which is beautiful in my perspective. So like, how do you guys kind of continue to make that the norm here?
That's a really good question. And for what it's worth, I think that's a question that I ask myself every day, is what is an opportunity to make that trust-giving exercise the norm? You know, the best version of these things is when it's a leap of faith, but it's an educated leap of faith. I have trust that this person cares so much that even if something goes hinky, they're going to do whatever they can to cover or make everything work. And the best version is one in which I'm surprised by the outcome and think, I trusted that was going to be awesome, but it was even cooler than I thought. And it was because I let them go do it. The worst version is when I don't know how to let go, and I want to oversee because maybe the trust is missing or hasn't been fully shaped yet. And how does mama bird say, all right, baby birds jump out of the nest, I know you're going to be fine, right? That's it's a really difficult thing to do. And we try to find a combination of small ways to exercise that to build up to the big way. I'm going to give you a key to this place and I'm going to trust that everything is going to be awesome. Because you have access. That means that you have more care, more responsibility, and you're going to be able to share access. My relationship with Alex and everything he has given to me and taught me and everything I give back to our community is one in which we try to model a kind of leadership in which we just believe in people and offer people opportunities. And it is really important that you find small opportunities to do this. And then, to say surprise people with a big one is not quite right, because no one ought to be surprised. At a certain point in time, we're like, yeah, I've leveled up to this. I know you can trust me, and vice versa. Here's an anecdote. An Indy Hall member texted me over the weekend, completely out of the blue, that he heard a band I like is going to be playing a concert in the afternoon, and he just heard this on the radio, and so he bought tickets for me. He doesn't like this band, he doesn't listen to this band, he just remembered this about me, and he bought tickets for me. And at the same time, when he had texted me, I was digging through my inbox, found a chain of emails between me and this person in 2017. I was talking with him about hosting an event in a previous version of Indy Hall. And we have this policy, if somebody reached out to me and said, I want to host an event, I would say, I'm going to pair you with a member of our community who is also interested in this space. You can work with that person. That person's going to host it with you. I won't be the person. I'm going to give them the responsibility and they're going to work with you. And it was a way in which I can pass the ball and create a different relationship that I'm not a part of, right? I just enabled it. And I'm going through this email chain from 2017, and I'm watching a member of our community who's not really present these days, but is always present in my heart and in my memory and in the history of our community. But I'm reading through these emails in which he's just taking ownership. Like the feeling of giving ownership and knowing that you're doing something good and then seeing someone pick it up and run with it and kill it. There's nothing in the world like that feeling. And I think the power to share power, I wish I could remember the first time I ever felt that at Indy Hall. But realistically, the first time I ever felt that, it was because it was shared with me. And then somebody said, oh, by the way, you're deputized to do that. And often I find that when I share a small amount of power or a big amount of power with Indy Hall members, the hardest thing is to convince them that, no, you have it now. You know, like the hardest thing is to get them on board with
the trick.
With how I feel and say, go off, do it. And there's this joke that we have, like somebody gives feedback or insight, or I want to do this or I want to do that. And often when somebody gives it to a higher up or somebody who has more responsibility, you know, that person is saying, can you do this for me? And there's this joke that we have within Indy Hall, which is this phrase, that sounds cool, you should do that. Right. And it's kind of a joke because it's like a deflecting point. You're asking me to do a thing. No. You do the thing.
But if we evolve that, it's also, that sounds awesome. How can I help you do that?
Yeah.
Which is different from doing it for you. It's shifting more to doing it with you.
Yeah.
The support aspect.
The reminder of the power that you have. You've got to do it in little ways and big ways. And little ways can be stuff like, if in conflict, you're empowered to talk to someone and say, hey, I'm sorry, do you mind? You're on the phone and there's another place. I can book a room for you. I can help you out. You can advocate for yourself. There's things like that. And in big ways, it's saying, I trust you to have 24/7 access to a space where hundreds of people keep their stuff and you're going to take care of it in the same sincerity that I would take care of it. Indy Hall is not we're not an exception. This is not the only place you can do that stuff. And it's meaningful to me to hear Alex talk about his, previous bosses when he was a co-op and when he was working at a computer repair store and these kinds of things, because I think I am now in a practice to give credit to the people who gave that to me. And hopefully every single person I give power to is going to add to that chain of trust.
And to kind of add to, having people here to step up and be like, hey, I'm going to watch over this space with the same care as you guys. It's amazing to see sometimes when there's a request for a volunteer to, hey, do you mind opening up? And people are like, yeah. And it's not yeah in a nervous way. It's yeah, like I care this much about this place too.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that in a little over a week, Adam's leaving for a 2-week vacation with an Indy Hall member and friend, which is also very cool. And in almost any other business, that would be figuring out internal coverage schedules or just like adjusting operations to simplify. Like there's small businesses handle this thing all the time. And it was actually a member remarked to me that they got the email about the call for support. And basically Adam put together a message saying, hey, I'm going away. Here's a couple of things that would be really helpful that literally everybody in this community can do. And put together a real easy on-ramp little sign up spreadsheet. And within a day, the spreadsheet was maybe had 2 or 3 open slots out of 20. And curious what your expectations were. Going into it, I was like, I'm fairly confident this is going to be fine. But you never know. Because we also haven't really done something quite like that since the big reset that was the pandemic and quarantine and all those things.
Yeah.
And to see it happen anyway, I was like, okay, good. We're still, we still got the juice.
Yeah.
But then to hear a member say to me, like, I wanted to sign up, but by the time I clicked on the link, there was only a couple of slots left. And they expressed this awe and then straight up asked her, like, that's going to feel really good, doesn't it? And I was like, yeah, it does. And he's like, 'cause, I could imagine being at a WeWork and getting an email from their staff and saying, hey, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks. can anybody help? And people being like, no, why would I help you?
Who are you?
And and that's not a reflection necessarily of that person, but it is a reflection of the ecosystem and expectations,
Right.
which I think is really at the heart what we're describing. This is stuff that there's so many things that we do that if you just look at the surface level, we look very similar to identical to whole industries of workspace providers. But if you're willing to scratch just below it, it does not take a lot of work to say, oh, things are happening a little bit different here. And then you go a little further, oh, they're happening a lot different. Oh, that's not an accident. It's very much on purpose, and it is an observable pattern. And I think of those things, like that might be the thing I'm most proud of, is that those experiences we're describing don't just come from us.
Right.
They come from, yes, they're enabled by the collective, but they also come from our ability to trust in the collective, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, in the past like month, I can think of a dozen times where I've seen Indy Hall members do something for one another or together that made me think, damn, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. But with somebody who goes out of town for a wedding and another Indy Hall member watches their dog and now has a special relationship with their pet and their family. People who went to a committee meeting to talk about bicycle and pedestrian safety and seeing multiple people who I know who are a part of this community who took it upon themselves to support one another and advocate for themselves and to do something good in our city. And these moments where I'm seeing what I hope to be offering to Indy Hall members all the time, what I get from Indy Hall members and from Alex, and they're just offering it to one another. I mean, it's crazy. It bowls me over. It's unbelievable. And I do have the anxiety and fear of post-COVID. Have we rebuilt in such a way that people are doing that with one another? And in some ways, me going away on this trip feels like a test, whether I designed it or expected it. I can't say I did, but
This is directly connected to the value of you doing these interviews and profiles, is like the value of that happening is both it happening and people, whether they participated in it or not, seeing it happen. And so I'm most excited about Adam coming back refreshed from an amazing trip and having the most, I want to go to the word engaged, but the word engaged has such weird baggage on it now.
yeah,
But I can't think of something else in its place in the moment, to see the most engaged version of our community that we've had in recent history. And again, that's not a guarantee, but I think if everything we know is true and continues to prove itself out, that is not an unbelievable outcome of you going away for 2 weeks.
yeah.
I think so. There's two things, and I'll get back to making sense of what you're saying about the engaged, because it relates back to that WeWork thing that you pointed out, clicked in my mind. But one of the things, like talking about, how people help people here, Jules, I got to give her a huge shout out. I met her through a friend of mine, and then we ran into each other here. I can't tell you how pivotal she has been in the trajectory of my life since being in Indy Hall. She helped me just kind of get back into the workforce and find a job that I now love and appreciate. But it's just, I don't know if that could have happened outside of here.
Right.
And it kind of is a testament to speaking about the people who congregate here. Or even if that's not really about who some of these people are when they come here, it's like a growth mindset, a growth emotional state, all these things. And then on the side of the WeWork thing, we're talking about how somebody, if they got that email at WeWork, they were like, we wouldn't do that. This place is also the embodiment of the bystander thing, where it's like somebody can call 911. I'm going to keep walking.
Mm-hmm.
This place is the exact opposite of that, where it's like, no, I'm going to be the one to step up and call 911. Or it's, oh, there's litter on the ground. I'm going to pick it up instead of somebody walking by and be like, I'm going to worry about it. It's interesting to see that exist in this space, if that makes sense.
It does. I mean, I have a very concrete philosophy on like why and how that is. Not borrowed from workspace, borrowed from like neighborhoods and urban design and planning and culture. And the simplified version is people don't care about the stuff they share until they care about the people they share it with. And I think if you look at the world around us, things that don't make sense make a little more sense with that lens applied, right?
Right.
And so I can't make you care about stuff, but I can help you care about the people you share that stuff with. And then whether that stuff continues or not, the relationship has the ability to persist.
Right.
The relationship transcends whatever the shared thing, whether that's place, space, equipment, gear, whatever it may be. So that's why if we're optimizing for something that is distinct, it's not butts and seats, it's not headcount, it's potential relationships, both the initial connections as well as all of the layers of depth that are possible when you remove many of the other infrastructure or cultural barriers that would even allow that thing to start, let alone grow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, talking about the community and how everybody kind of develops the same mindset or something like that, you would think from the outside, it's, oh, people get screened before they come in here, right? It's no, people come in, they look around, they're like, yeah, no, this is me, or no, this is not me, or I think I can grow this to be me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just interesting.
When we were doing way more work with other co-working spaces, as co-working was still mostly independent, but growing globally, it was one of the most common questions that we got is like, how do you filter? And I was like, who are you to filter? How in one interaction, whether it be an email or a tour or an interview or a form, how could you possibly have enough information to judge a person in or out? And we have enough evidence over the years of people who, on first impression, present in one direction and then reveal themselves. We would have guessed so wrong. Some of our like best first impressions would have been absolute nightmares, and some of the folks that we would have said, I don't think this is a great fit, showed up once they were given the chance to, or maybe some guidelines or frameworks or guidance or just the modeling of people around them became some of our best members ever. And so like, it's a funny spot where counterintuitively, I don't trust myself to judge that. I trust myself to judge somebody who is potentially going to be a destructive force.
Right.
And I think we've gotten better at that over the years. But the average person coming through is not looking to be a bull in a china shop, I don't think.
Right.
And I think if that's your default assumption about the world, that's going to attract and repel something different than what we attract and repel. So again, it's kind of leading with trust. It's like, I trust that you're not here to be a bull in a china shop and you're coming here for something. And if we know what that something is, we can help you find other people here for that same something, as well as people here for a complementary different something. And allowing them, the difference between telling them what to do and allowing them to discover and do it on their own, I think it's something that like I did instinctively and then I had to figure out how to teach other people how to do. And of the people that have learned from it, no one has run better than me, than Adam, and made it their own than Adam. And that's to the degree that there are now additional generations of people that have learned it not from me, but from Adam. And I think that's the coolest. Yeah. And some of those people are here in our community. Some were and have moved on with their life and they're in other places. Some of those people are literally in cities around the world serving communities full of people that we have never met and will never meet. And they don't know that we exist. And they are still benefiting from the impact of Adam having learned that stuff from me and then them having learned it from Adam. And like that, and that feels like a magic trick to have been able to do that. And I think, you know, in the current chapter, it's just kind of being honest about the similarities and the differences between that era and now, and the fact that we kind of got to go like rebuild, but we never went back to like square one entirely. Feels like this really interesting mix of like opportunity and responsibility that I think is what guides our thinking, both like on the day-to-day as well as the big picture. Why are we doing all of this in the first place?
So 2 questions. What is a project or an idea that either of you have introduced to Indy Hall that is your favorite from each other? So for instance, Alex, what is your favorite Adam thing? Adam, what is your favorite Alex thing that has been introduced to Indy Hall and like the growth from that?
First answer, best answer. The thing that comes to mind and one of my favorite stories to tell because it embodies both so many facets of Adam and so many facets of Indy Hall is the art show that you produced with Sean, Take What You Need. In that era, we were doing like 5 to 6 shows a year, and they were a mix of first timer solo shows for like artist debuts, but the majority of them were like community themed shows. Took that idea one step further by inviting not just visual artists, but writers into the fray. Because among Adam's skills, talents, passions is writing, creative writing, in addition to professional communication. And so the idea, as I remember it, was that artists were invited to reach through their notebooks for a little vignette or a memory, not even a full story, one, maybe 2 sentences. Put all those sentences into a hat, and all the artists that participated reach into the hat, pull out a sentence. They do not get to talk to the writer about what was intended. They just make art inspired by it. And it's not until the night of the show where you see the visual art framed with the text written below it that they get to discuss what just happened here.
Whoa.
That, I mean, first of all, it feels like such an amazing invitation to everyone involved. And then also, I think it embodies that Tumblr model of, instead of telling people do this thing and get this result, the value and ownership that comes from discovering it on your own instead of being told. I feel like that project in my memory is a turning point for the depth of how tightly and confidently you understood what we do. And feels like a foundational building block that was not the only one, but is one of several foundation building blocks that I think we are still in some ways built on top of.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a lot of fondness for that show when we did that show. A lot of strong memories about that time. And I feel fortunate in that even if we're not doing that show specifically encapsulated in that framework, I feel like a lot of the things that we do regularly these days pull from that framework. Finish my thought. I've definitely learned from you, Alex, about the power of sharing a half-baked idea. And effectively that art show was that, and people being vulnerable and open and honest in sharing their half-baked ideas to make something that nobody could have imagined. So that show was a really cool encapsulation of that. But I do think that I see that DNA just in virtually everything we do these days. My answer is Alex has been a part of the production of a Christmas party that is for people who don't have a company Christmas party. And the notion is when Christmas and the holidays come around, one of the only joys of being a part of a company is when we all get together for the company party. But if you are an independent worker or you are a remote worker or you work from home, you can't really go to a company party. And Alex has made a company party for people who don't have a company to party with. And that is such a cool subversion of a normal thing that we all know that enables and invites a ton of people to be a part of something because that resonates across this huge workforce that is often very invisible. And part of the reason why I bring that up as an example is I just find that so clever, and it was so well attended, and people loved that idea so much. It was like instantly recognizable of, oh yeah, that's a thing that I want. And it's a thing that speaks to me, and it seems so simple, but why didn't anybody else come up with that before? It's so great. And I think that is seen across a lot of different events. Alex similarly has made like a job fair where it was inverted. Instead of people going to tables and talking to employers and learning about their companies, you know, the independent people who have skills were enabled to be the main event and to have employers come and meet with them. I think Alex has a brain for taking a traditional idea that we can all recognize and inverting it so the emphasis is in the right place. It's in a better place. It's not in the place that we all normally do because we've always done that. It's finding the people who really benefit, like plucking that element out and saying, no, you're the main event. And it just immediately gets people on board because we're not doing something so far from what we're used to, but it's refocusing and recentering on the people who really matter, who make it count. And again, this is one of those things where I can think of these events specifically that Alex has produced with our neighbors at bars, in venues. And so they're very cool collaborations, but that sort of inversion that here's a thing we all recognize as a thing we've always done. how do we pay attention to the part that actually matters is very much an ethos that Alex carries.
In closing, you guys have known each other, you said 14 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 14 years of friends, Indy Hall, all that stuff. What is like the most impactful or important lesson that you've learned from each other, whether it be an action or a saying or advice or something like that?
The thing that comes to mind is, it's not sexy, but I think about it all the time, is the commitment to the long game. It's not normal in our country. The long game doesn't exist in our country. People want a short turnaround and they want to see return on investment fast. And so they don't do the nurturing that is important of relationships, of talent, of anything, right? And Indy Hall, in our 19 years, and Alex's commitment in me and to the people that we operate with, the commitment to the long game means the sowing of the seeds, the looking at the small amount of return and saying, yeah, this is on the right path. And the constantly being a part of that thing to see it through. And it's not going to be fast. And when it happens, you're going to know all the work was worthwhile. Remember the first time as a child learning how long it takes to grow a tree from a sapling to the size of a tree in my neighborhood? And that really blowing my mind, being like, what? You're telling me it takes 10, 15, 20 years for the tree to be that size? Who's got time for that? Well, the planet does.
Right.
And our country doesn't really. It's just not normal. It's not a norm. And Indy Hall is constantly investing in a long game. I think to me, Alex gave me not just a lesson or a phrase, but like a kind of vision, like a second sight, a sense I don't think most people have. And it is based on trust, and it is based on care, and it is based on a kind of depth of sincerity that makes all of this worthwhile, that I hope to bring to every relationship I'm in and everything I engage with. And it's really important.
That's cool.
The worst days of my life I've talked with Alex. The best days of my life I've talked with Alex. The worst days often have something to do with that process getting fucked up.
Yep. Totally. I think my answer here is like the way you invest in a person will change over time, right? And so I think of like early days, it was a lot of just like me bringing you into my language, my framing, my thinking, sometimes us coming up with those models together. I think about like the bullseye and stuff from when we were trying to take a thing that was instinctive for us and share it with other people. And Adam's like instincts of getting it, but also not as being as deep in it as I was part of that fusion. But, you know, later on, as we grew and the things that I needed out of Adam and out of our working relationship changed, one of the greatest professional lessons here was when I was like, I don't think I know how to manage a person in this relationship. I consider myself not a very good manager to begin with. I should come out and just say, for all that we've talked about here, I also know like many of the ways that I must be a nightmare boss. And not for the ways that many bosses are often a nightmare, but like my expectations are high and sometimes they're weird. But like Adam's ability to step up to that has always been impressive. But we reached a point where I was like, I don't think that I can manage this. I think he needs to manage himself better and differently, and being able to bring in someone like Kara and watching the way you work with her influence the way that we work and the way that you work on your own stuff without any reliance on me. Mm-hmm. Like, my first time getting to see that kind of investment of growth so upfront and close and to feel it so deeply. I was like, oh, there's a lot of different ways to invest in a person. There's the financial ones, but sometimes it's like finding the right thinking partner that's not you, but will help them. And I have so much admiration for, because I don't think I would have taken to it as well as you did. Learning from and with Kara the way that has benefited you, I don't think would have worked for me. And so the realization is like, me helping teach somebody do the things the way I do can only go so far at a certain point. If part of my goal is to let go and have you like hold it entirely on your own, I can't be the source. But sometimes like the deep end on its own is also not going to work. And so like what can we bring into the mix? And because that kind of support is not what I think I would benefit from, it would not have been obvious to me to choose it. And so like I'm grateful for that lesson of just because it worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for somebody else. And sometimes I need to think outside the box, or just, again, ask the friend group. Because like Caro has been a friend of Indy Hall for many years. And part of the reason I was pretty confident is that it was going to work was, in a lot of ways, actually bringing her into the fold is an interesting mirror to the way you and I met, because I was not talking to her about helping you or us or even Indy Hall. It was organizational design for the 10,000 Independence Project, the other many spinoff projects. And I specifically wanted somebody who I felt like we had already a pretty deep understanding of like design principles and a lot of the things that we've been talking about here. So I wouldn't have to explain them over and over. But also I wanted somebody who was going to help me think about designing an organization differently than I would with Indy Hall, because I know that left to my own devices, I'm going to create another Indy Hall. And I love this place. I love these people. I don't need another one. And so like, a combination of the relationship and the trust that she and I had before we worked together made her the obvious choice when I just so happened to find out she had quit her job to go out on her own to do consulting. And then in us working together in consulting, realized actually, I don't think I need her help with that org nearly as much as I need her help within Indy Hall, and specifically being a guiding force, and the growth and confidence that you have shown on the other side of that is a thing that I'm like, I don't think I could have done that. I don't have the skills or even in some cases the distance that other person was able to bring into it. But ultimately, you're the one who did the work. So
yeah, I mean, that's an investment in me and in Kara. And I talk about Kara. I sometimes refer to her as my work therapist. And she is a terrific intermediate between the ways in which Alex and I conceive of things. And she has all of the structural, logical, I can apply this functioning brain. And she pulls tarot cards and has a bit more of a mushy, more in touch with an emotional frequency that resonates really well with me. And I think she helps me work to translate my own ideas and my own grievances and my own ambitions into something that that can be done, can be acted on, not just felt. And she's been a really integral part of my experience with being able to push past a certain ceiling. Is particularly because, you know, within the flexibility and latitude that we have at Indy Hall, all of that stuff also sometimes means a lack of structure. And so having her help me build a ladder rung by rung is really vital, because that's not something that I can always do for myself or Alex and I can do together. So yeah, having an investment in her is an investment in me and has brought a lot to the team, I think, and hopefully a lot to the community.
Well, gents, in closing, is there anything you would like to share for anybody listening?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go back to the first thing that we were talking about when you had asked, you know, of all of the profiles that you've read, what is something that you've learned from or jumped out at you? And this is my offer or my invitation with members of our community. I want to see this project continue. I'm really excited about the member profiles. I want to be really straightforward about what it is offering to other members, which is, in my mind, in no uncertain terms, it's hard to meet people even if you want to. And so this is a great way to grease the wheels a little bit and help people meet one another. So my invitation, I compel people to be weirder, to be as specific and specialized and nuanced and individualized as you can be, because you can do that within this space and within this community and context. And the more you do that, the more we'll talk about our, you know, cereal that we all eat. The specifics are the best part. And I want people to really bring that with them.
yeah, part of my thinking as we've reflected on all of this is we're living in a world and a time where it feels like there's not just so much going on, but like an impossible amount to do. And a lot of it feels like urgent or dire or scary or like way too big or all of the above, right? And so I think of it through two lenses. One is, don't forget to do stuff just because you want to do it. There doesn't need to be an outcome. When there's so many needed outcomes demanding us to do things, I don't want us to starve ourselves and think that like everything's got to have an outcome, right? A lot of the stuff we've been talking about are the result of doing things that didn't need to have an outcome, and the lack of needing to have an outcome is exactly what allowed the outcome to happen. Right. That was very hard to get out without tripping over my own tongue, so I'm glad it worked as well as it did. But the other side of it is that I think there's so many ways to do Indy Hall and do community, and I think the simplest one is look for things that you were already going to do and find ways to do them together. Like the invitation can come from anybody. Scale is not a goal. Going out with one other person, two other people can be just as impactful, sometimes more impactful than putting together something big and for everybody. Something can be for somebody and for everybody at the same time, but only one of them can happen, I think, at a time. So don't forget to just do stuff and try stuff. And I think we both think of Indy Hall. There's the place, there's the community, and there's the platform. And the platform really comes back to a lot of what you were describing, Cam, which is like I want to do a thing. I want to try a thing. And our response might be out of the gate, cool, do it. It also might be some refining of, well, what's the smaller version, the easier version we can start with? And if we come back with that, it's not because we don't think you can do the bigger one. It's because we know that the bigger one becomes easier when you've got the wins of the smaller one as like your tailwind, so to speak. So to anybody who is a member or in our orbit, think through the things you want to do through that lens. Is like, what could I do if nothing was in the way? Or if the one thing that feels the most in the way is something that we can easily remove? Or on the other side of it is, if not that, what's the smaller version? You don't have to come to me with a fully formed pitch or idea, but if you said, it would be really cool if this thing happened, and I'm thinking here's a couple of the first steps, maybe, that is the easiest thing in the world for either of us to say yes to. We're always looking for yeses. The world feels designed to say no. So what does it look like when a tiny slice of the world is designed to say yes? And if I'm going to say no to something, it's not going to be a no. It's going to be a not like that, and here's why. But what's the goal? Because if we understand the goal, maybe we come up with a version that is a yes, that fulfills your goal while also navigating whatever why we might be concerned about based on our own past experiences, or sometimes just like straight up incompatible. That sounds great. Just doesn't need to happen here. Like the goal is not for this to be the center of the universe. It's, if anything, it's the opposite. It's the things that happen here spread out into the universe. And I think I'm most proud when the impact that's felt of Indy Hall, whether it's by a member or not, that impact is felt without them ever having set foot in the room.
You know, the words that pop up in my mind that I think are really powerful that I would share with anybody who wants to do something and are hesitant to do it because they're not sure if it'll be perfect, but small, shaggy, sincere. Those three things hopefully empower people.
Can you please make that the next newsletter?
Yeah, small,
really
shaggy,
good.
sincere. Because, you know, the refinement will come over time, and make something small but beautiful. You can do that. Nothing is too difficult. It's just a series of smaller things that you can do. But don't lose the sincerity. That's the most important, consistent part, whatever it is, because people feel that, you know. So that's where I'm at.
Word. Well, thank you, gents. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cam.